Deion Sanders sat down with Garrett Bush on the Barbershop podcast and said something so raw, so unfiltered, that it should have stopped the entire sports conversation cold. He said, for the first time in his life, he couldn't fix it, couldn't protect his son, couldn't make it better. A Hall of Famer, a man who has overcome everything this sport and this world threw at him. And he was sitting there telling you, on camera, with nothing to hide, that watching Shedeur Sanders get dragged through the mud during the 2025 NFL Draft was the one thing that broke through every wall he had. That's not a soundbite. That's a confession. That's a father bearing his soul in public. And what did the Cleveland media do with it? They went digging for the one clip they could package into outrage. Let's back up and actually tell this story the right way. Because if your only exposure to this situation was a Twitter snippet or a 60-second hot take segment, you didn't just miss a detail. You missed everything. Garrett Bush, respected, community-connected, genuinely trusted voice, sat down with Coach Prime for what turned out to be one of the most honest sports interviews in recent memory. Not a press conference, not a PR performance, a real conversation. And on the day it dropped, silence from the Cleveland media machine, because they had to watch it first, had to hunt for the moment they could surgically remove from every other moment around it. Strip out the warmth. Delete the praise. Cut the context. That takes time. Slander doesn't assemble itself overnight. It wasn't until Mike Florio started firing off snippets, not the full interview, that the outrage engine finally kicked on. And by the end of the week, Cleveland media was acting like Deion had declared war on the franchise. Here's what actually happened. Deion Sanders told Garrett Bush he planned to visit Cleveland and sit down with Browns head coach Todd Monken. Not as a father meddling in his son's career, but as a coach who spent years developing Shedeur and wanted to share that knowledge with a man now responsible for his growth. His tendencies, his triggers, his mentality under pressure. The things you only learn by being in the building every single day. That's not interference. That's a competitive advantage. That's exactly the kind of inside information an intelligent coaching staff should want access to. And here's the part that really flipped the script. According to multiple reports, it wasn't even Deion's idea. Todd Monken reportedly extended the invitation himself. So let that land. The Cleveland media spent a week crucifying this man for doing exactly what the head coach asked him to do. Now here's what nobody clipped. Nobody tweeted. Nobody ran a segment on. In that same interview, when Garrett Bush described Monken as a straight shooter who builds his system around his quarterback, Deion said, on camera, with genuine feeling, God, I love it. God, I love him. That's Coach Prime expressing real enthusiasm about your new head coach. Where's that segment? Where are the tweets celebrating the fact that the Sanders family is genuinely locked in on Cleveland's new direction? It gets deeper. Deion also praised GM Andrew Berry during that interview, spoke positively about the organization's leadership, called out what Berry is building as something real. Think about who's saying that. A man who had every reason on earth to carry bitterness toward this franchise after everything his son went through under the previous regime. And instead he's offering warm, unprompted, forward-looking praise for the people now running the building. The Cleveland media didn't touch it, because it didn't fit the story they needed to sell. And that tells you more about the coverage than anything else. Before we go any further, if this breakdown is hitting different for you, if you feel like someone is finally laying this out straight, this is what we do here at Browns Breakout. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Now let's talk about Shedeur's actual situation, because the context matters enormously. This is a young man who fell to the 5th round, in part because of anonymous pre-draft leaks that his own father called outright lies. Then the team that drafted him gave him 0 first-team reps during training camp. Not limited reps, 0. He didn't even make his NFL debut until the second half of a Week 11 loss to the Ravens. And only then because Dillon Gabriel went down with a concussion. So you're asking a 5th-round quarterback who never took a first-team rep in practice to step onto an NFL field mid-game, mid-season, with nothing to lean on but raw talent and belief in himself. And then people want to dissect his numbers like he had every resource in the world available to him. He threw for roughly 1,400 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions over his final 7 starts for a team that went 5-12. He was learning on the fly, in a hostile media environment, carrying the psychological weight of the most high-profile draft slide in recent memory. And he's still here, still competing, still standing. Now heading into 2026, Shedeur is in a real quarterback competition under Todd Monken, a coach who was specifically brought in because of a genuine belief that he can develop this kid into what he was always supposed to be. And Deion Sanders wants to walk into a room and hand the coaching staff every piece of knowledge he's accumulated about his son over years of coaching him at the highest collegiate level. That's the story. That's the full picture. And when you see it that way, you realize the only real question left is why the narrative around this family never seems to change. No matter what they do, no matter what they say, no matter how much evidence stacks up on the other side. The answer isn't complicated. The Sanders family refuses to be managed. They refuse to let their story be written exclusively by the people who've already decided what the ending looks like. They speak for themselves. They push back. They keep receipts. And in a media ecosystem built on controlling narratives and manufacturing controversy on demand, that makes them a permanent target. But here's what the media keeps getting catastrophically wrong. You cannot rewrite who Deion Sanders is. 2 Hall of Fames. 2 professional sports at the highest level simultaneously. A program-building track record at Jackson State and Colorado that speaks entirely for itself. You can have opinions about his style. You can debate his methods. But you cannot make a father feel ashamed for caring about his son. And Shedeur Sanders? He proved in 7 starts, with no reps, no support system under the previous regime, and an entire media ecosystem waiting for him to fail, that he belongs. The new staff believes it. Monken believes it. And after that barbershop interview, you now know the Sanders family is fully invested in making this work in Cleveland. The story isn't over. It may just finally be getting started. And we'll be right here watching every single chapter unfold.